everyone. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. So we have our webinar, Balance as Subject in Life and Arts today. So let me talk about our flow today first. So first of all, we will have our speaker, Ekkehard, to talk about our webinar workshop today, which is focused on sculpture and also arts and life and balance. And then he will have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions about arts or about sculpture, then you can talk to Ekkehard directly. And after that, we will have a very short introduction about admissions to the Hong Kong Baptist University. So if you're interested in pursuing a study about visual arts or any programs in HKBU, then you have to stay for that section. And we will have another Q&A section afterwards for you to ask questions about admission. But actually, if you have questions and you don't know like when to let us know about it, you can just make use of the chat section here. So use the chat box. You can key in whatever questions you have, and we will find the appropriate timing to answer your questions. Before we start, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Ekkehard. Ekkehard studied sculpture at the University of Arts Bremen in Germany and also Edinburgh College of Arts in Scotland. He graduated in 1999 with an MA from Chelsea College of Arts in University of Arts London. And in 2000, he established his studio at APT Studio in London. And he works very successfully as a contemporary sculptor. He has been a guest lecturer at various arts colleges. And in 2017, he finally joined us and became one of our assistant professor of sculpture in the Academy of Visual Arts. So now I'm passing the time to Ekkehard. Ekkehard, thank you, Ekkehard.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar about balance as subject in life and art. I have chosen the title because the subject is quite dear to me and is close to me because it is a subject I explored greatly in my personal work, in my artistic work, and I thought it might be a good leeway into explaining what we are doing at the Academy and what I particularly do in the sculpture department. And I want to basically introduce what we're doing, what the program offers, and sort of to give you an idea what you could do, which is obviously just a small section of the Academy of Visual Arts, but it will give you sort of a, an idea. So I shall, the way I will conduct this, I will give you a brief introduction about the program. I will talk briefly about space, object, and balance, and how that leads into a practical exercise I want to conduct with you if you have the chance. So you all have the chance to kind of participate, because these are sort of practical exercises I sometimes do with my students, and I particularly did over the last half year during the lockdown, where I had to do a lot of online teaching. These online sections of aspects of online teaching were really quite successful, and I will continue to integrate that. So I will do a practical exercise. I'm broadcasting this from my studio here in Aberdeen, in the south of the island. So I will move over to a sort of more performative area later on in my talk. I also want to give sort of brief examples of positioning and balancing from a sort of more historic sort of content. Then there will be a question and answer session, and I hope you can sort of just feel free if you have any questions. So I will start sharing my screen now, and I will start with a brief talk about, so I'm looking at this screen now. Right. Off we go. Everybody's ready, hopefully. Good. Balance as a subject in life and art. For the first picture you see here was me starting an online program last semester, where I did sort of performative elements that had a sort of sort of a sculptural connotation and sort of a strong sculptural aspect. We could not use the studios. We couldn't go into the studio. I teach studio practice, but you can find aspects of sculpture in daily life, in daily objects, because sculpture and art are very closely related, because it deals with three dimensions, with the world itself. So the Academy and sculpture. Generally, if you're not familiar with the topic of sculpture, how to make sculpture usually separates in two strings. One is an additive string, and the other one is a subtractive string. So you have additive techniques and subtractive techniques. It's kind of quite obvious that with additive techniques, you have clay modeling, you've got wax modeling, you have construction where you take pieces of wood or steel via gluing or welding, or casting. That can be plaster, it can be concrete, it can be bronze. So you could say one of those concrete towers we are probably all sitting in at the moment is a work of sculpture, because of additive sculpture, because it has been poured in concrete and built up. So it's added up on top of each other. Subtractive techniques is something a bit more what I did and do in my own personal work, is taken away. You start from an entity, such a block of stone or a block of wood or a block of foam, and you take bits of it. Yeah, you take things away. So you probably that includes a little bit more planning, but it also includes or excludes changes, because you start with a finite dimension, whatever 2 by 1 by 1, and whatever you make will have to fit into that block. So it can be carving, wood, stone, foam, etc. But also you can cut out shapes, you know, that can be plasma or laser cutting. We have both facilities at the Academy, but it's also general milling, grinding, cutting of materials. So when you see sort of shiny aluminium blocks, so usually that is milled out with sort of CNC cutters and so on and so forth. Just want to quickly sort of talk about what we're doing. So this is, I teach at the Kai Tak campus, wonderful campus near Choi Hong Station. And these are sort of some of my students working in marble. So I think we're the only arts program in Hong Kong that offers stone carving, for example. So, and I try to kind of, whenever the weather allows it, we will work outside, because we have these wonderful grounds which I try to make use of. Yeah, my students obviously go through various aspects of production, additive be it or subtractive. Here, this is a plaster casting workshop that is based on modeling. Sometimes we work directly in plaster, so that, you know, for example, here, these pieces have inner steel structure, so students learn how to weld and build up inner structures, and then work in larger like this student who made these arms in plaster that has a steel construction inside that needed to be welded. I encourage my students to work big, because it's something that is equally challenging but also liberating to my students, because usually everything is small. They're good at making small things. You know, growing up in small households, they are very good at making small things. But I try to kind of get them out of their comfort zone, so I force them to make big, and they really excel at it, you know. We also have bronze casting facilities, so bronze casting is also part of our program. This is the furnace in full swing. This is how, when we take the casings, the chamotte casings out of the oven, which are then subsequently poured. But we also increasingly work with digital technology. So this is a workshop I give about 3D scanning. So we have 3D scanners and printers and so on and so forth. So students learn how to use digital tools, and they come naturally into the production of sculpture. It's just part and parcel of making work these days. Hold on. Why is this not working? My computer is just Okay, yeah, stone carving is obviously part and parcel also from the program. Usually, so we have blocks from Vietnam, but also mainland China. This is a piece of marble. And these are sort of some of the results my students produce. So these are all first works of students. I also work with a former assistant of mine, Parry, who has a company who reclaims natural, local wood. So this is a local acacia. The one carved this fragment of a bone. It's quite big. It's a kind of a big piece, quite beautifully carved. So we carve wood locally sourced from local resources. Students produce all sorts of works. This is a company. This is sort of a more mechanical talking rabbit. Antonia made this piece in steel, and this figure on the top is a combination of resin and plaster. So when we come to space, object, and balance in art, it is sort of a subject that has evolved. Initially, sculpture was always attached to buildings. You know, it was a decorative form. When you go back to the Egyptians, they had also freestanding sculpture, but sculpture kind of very much developed from the wall, from the painting. Then you start scratching into it, but also then, you know, the first sculpture, Venus from Willendorf, is sort of a little sculpture in limestone. But very often, sculpture sort of developed from the wall until it became freestanding. So this is just a frieze of Chartres in outside Paris, big cathedral, and you have these sort of figures that the figures gradually moved away from the wall. The figures are distorted. These figures are not of usual proportion. The figures are actually taller, so they're kind of stretched because we were the viewer usually sees them from below, so they kind of lengthen the figures quite a lot, so almost like kind of stretching them, that they look kind of normal when we see them from below. So sculpture kind of tried to adapt to positioning and try to adapt to where they are and how they are looked at. And positioning is a very important part of making sculpture. So contrapposto, the contrapost is a position when we stand comfortably on one leg. So we all have that. When you stand straight up and you try to kind of talk to a friend, you naturally fall into this position where you move from one leg to the other leg, where one leg takes the weight and then you move on to the other. It's a sort of a constant balancing. And when you think about it, doing that turns you almost into a classical form of sculpture. The plinth you're standing on is the earth, and you are the sculpture. That sort of positions itself through the gravitational field. You know, what we constantly have to work against gravitation. This huge sphere we are standing on with an iron core is kind of pulling us down. And sculpture, the field of sculpture is kind of dealing with that through many, many different ways and forms, and finds a visual equivalent to illustrate that, you know. So for example, here on the left-hand side, we have the figure of David, famously carved by Michelangelo in a contrapost position. I don't want to go into the details of it, but it's kind of interesting why Michelangelo carved this figure in this sort of relaxed position when David in that moment was facing a very severe challenge by Goliath, you know. So it's very relaxed, standing there, reassured of himself that, you know, he's capable of whatever flies towards him. He's reassured because he's centered. He's centered and he's relaxed in contrapost position. And obviously, this to the right-hand side, you sort of see how a contrapost position, how the angles, for example, in the body work. So these are sort of things I sort of talk about in some of my lectures, and some of which we explore as with my students. This is a baldachin, so it can go into architecture. This is the baldachin by Bernini, Italian sculptor, and you can sort of see, so this is in the Peter's Dome in Rome, and you can sort of see how these columns sort of distort through the weight of this enormous a roof that sort of sits on top of it, and Gothic columns, not Gothic columns, but Corinthian columns that sort of bulge off the weight of this weight that sits on top. So this is just a sort of an aspect of things I'm talking about in many aspects of my teaching. When it comes to stacking and balancing, we can also look at early child development. This is sort of an elemental thing we practice as little children. So stacking things up, falling down, trying it again. This is basically an exercise how to manipulate gravitation, the gravitational field we're constantly operating in and understanding it. So this is something we adapt and learn from a very, very early age. And you know, and sculpture is kind of very much sort of an extension of that. And I want to come now more towards a practical exercise I want to perform with all of you, or for those who have a space available. This is a work, this is not an artist, but this is actually a curator I know. His name is Horst Griese, and he was the first to support an Austrian artist called Erwin Wurm. Some of you might know him. And Erwin Wurm is kind of famous for his 1-minute sculpture. So he gives instructions, and these instructions are manifold, but usually they include objects that the performer, so the audience, have to sort of deal with. Yeah. So, for example, yeah, take these objects and kind of stick them to your head, for example. Horst Griese in this quite famous picture now. And here goes why is my computer not doing the next thing? Here we go. Another instruction, a 1-minute sculpture. So use a broomstick and make a sculpture with it. Or this is something I probably will ask you, well, we will come to it later, but this is another example. And you see at the wall is a little drawing that gives the instruction to the audience, you know, this is what you have to do, and then stand in that position for 1 minute. Now, Erwin Wurm doesn't really sort of, you know, stop there. The way the body interacts with objects, and he sees the body as a performative element in his sculpture. And the work sort of developed, you know, and from these sort of sculptures where he sort of started, he developed also to kind of adapt that to objects, and how do objects kind of relate to space and bulging and connection. And so he came up with a whole series of works about sort of fat cars, you know, not fat cars, but fat objects, sort of how objects sort of bulge from within. So it kind of makes sense when you look at his history. But so Erwin Wurm, certainly an artist you should look at. So this is, for example, one of his famous fat car series, or he even applied it to a house. So this is a house it's actually part of his studio complex in Vienna, or outside Vienna. It's called Fat House by Erwin Wurm. So, so sculpture can easily move from something that is very much in the moment and experimental, and then kind of sort of develop. It develops then also and adapts in the studio, and you end up with a piece of sculpture that somehow is connected with what you have done that is very experimental. So these things can sort of stretch, yeah? So, and I sort of try to instill that sort of experimental practice into my students, but also they will also have to learn just kind of classical skills. All my students can weld, all of them can carve, most of them, if they take the course. So, so all these sort of practical things, they all can plaster cast, they can all model. So that's all the sort of stuff that you need to be able to do in order to express yourself in material. So now we come to a practical exercise, and I will move over to a more performative situation in my studio. But what I want you all to do is to take a piece of paper and draw an instruction up for yourself. If you have 3 objects, get 3 objects and draw a little sketch, what you want to do with these objects and a wall. So what I want to do is you use 3 objects such as a pen, a ruler, or a light household object, and make a physical connection with the wall. This can also be a door if you only have a door available. Distribute these objects using your body without holding the objects in your hand. That's really crucial. Don't hold the objects in your hand. So you have to use your body and make this connection with the wall. So, but please make a drawing of your plan and then execute it for a minute. Yeah. If you can, take a photograph and compare what you actually have done on the wall with the drawing you have produced. Yeah. So I'm going to move over, but what I have done is I'm going to show you, if the camera picks it up. I made this little drawing because I thought I'm going to make, I tried to kind of create a diagonal line. So I have a few objects ready. So I use the palm here of my arm, a part of my body, and my foot to kind of create a diagonal line across the wall. Yeah. So I'm going to mute this now. I'm going to stop. Do I need to stop sharing? I probably do. No, I'm just going to mute this. Suki, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Then now, hold on, I need to stop sharing over there. Okay, can you all see me here?
Yes, good.
Excellent, excellent. So, again, so I decided to use an orange, a little box, and a Pritt stick. And here again is, so what I'm interested in is this sort of diagonal. I want to make a diagonal on the wall. So can you all see this? And this is what I want you to do while I'm doing this. Okay. So I'll probably use this one at my hip. I'm going to use the Pritt stick. This has to be here. This is the complicated one because I'm not allowed to use my hands, so I use my palm. Okay. And I'm holding this pose for 1 minute. And I think this minute is really quite important because you need to figure out how to position your body on one leg and find the sort of right connection and balance. And this is rather a difficult pose I have chosen because my left leg is already starting to shake. But this is really, for me, these things are kind of quite important because if you want to make sculpture, you need to be aware of your body and what your body does and how much space you take. For example, one of the courses I do next year, I do always in the autumn, I ask students to make a sculpture in plaster and steel. And that sculpture has to have the volume of their body, minimum the volume of their body. So they need to kind of figure out how much space they actually take up in, how much space they take up and find the equivalent in a sort of physical object. So these things are important. I think am I here up, Suki, with a minute, hopefully, because my leg is starting to shake.
I think it's already 1 minute, yeah.
Okay, right. So this is just a sort of an idea. How I try to kind of work with my students. You know, you do something like this, but then you go into the workshop and these sort of little body exercises, for example, make you aware of your body. How much space are you taking? When you walk, how much air do you push aside? Yeah. So these things are important.
to make you aware of you and yourself. And then you need to kind of find an equivalent, for example. And that can be, I don't know, a figurative sculpture, or it can not be a figure, it can just kind of something else. It is then it's completely up to the students who have to sort of explore their own ways. Right, I'm gonna go back to I'm gonna stop this now.
Unmute this. Here we go. Are we back again? Yeah?
Yeah, good, we're good.
Are we good? So how many of you have done this exercise now? Probably not many. People probably just thought, oh, this is sort of funny. Right. But I want to continue sharing my screen again. And so moving on from this sort of practical exercise that also obviously connects with the practice I do, and the practical parts I, for example, then move on with my students. I want to quickly talk about sort of examples of contemporary and historical significance. So when you make art, you're standing on top of a mountain, and everything below that mountain, everything you're standing on is the history of art. So when you're a student, you kind of climb up the mountain, and while you're climbing up the mountain, you gradually sort of explore parts of this mountain, which is art and art history, it's culture in itself. This is really important. This is important for you because it's for you as future artists. You need to be aware of the history and the context you're producing your work in. So I want to just briefly talk about a few things. And you know, how artists sort of develop balancing, for example, and weight. This is a statue of Mensurius. It's a sculpture from Egypt, and in Egypt at the time, this is about 250 BC, 2500 BC. Where artists sort of started to kind of go from a very sort of standing, usually figures were always portrayed standing straight, but this was the sort of first looseness where they sort of stepped into the world. You know, the step into the world is portrayed by this depiction here. And you have the same with the quite famous these statues in Greece, the Kouros, where they also kind of stand straight, and then artists sort of started to kind of move these sculptures ahead just with one step. So it's almost like they step into the world. And in the next picture, you see this is the temple of the Erechtheion at the Acropolis. And now this is quite significant for both architecture and sculpture, because we see here these figures, they're called caryatides. So these are basically figures in contrapost position. So you can see one knee is sort of relaxed. So basically the weight is distributed through the head. The head is slightly, you know, you can sort of see the pressure and the bulging of the column here in this sort of section. But the figures themselves are sort of standing quite relaxed, all in contrapost position, to come back to that. So they're standing with the weight just exposed on one leg. And they're holding up, which is something we call architrav. So architravo is a word that architects still use in their practice. It's usually a sort of a beam. It's basically, architrav is a beam, a loading beam, where you can put like a roof on, for example. And this sort of stepping and this sort of balancing and weight is sort of something that also moved into more contemporary practice. And we are going back here about 150 years. For those who probably, most of you know this figure, The Walking Man by Auguste Rodin. And this is sort of quite sort of cemented on the ground, but equally dynamic. So it's a standing and walking at the same time. And then this sort of stacking and balancing was a subject, again, many artists looked at, but it was particularly Brancusi, the Romanian artist, Constantin Brancusi, who then later on worked from Paris. But here you can, I kind of chose this picture because it also shows how closely sculpture is related to architecture. And I, in my practice, have worked with architects on many occasions. So this is sort of something I want my students also to be aware of. And I think a lot of students then can also kind of develop a practice into that direction. So here we have this sort of bird in bronze on a sort of a capital that has quite clearly a sort of an architectural connotation. I have chosen this really old picture of the endless column. This is also by Constantin Brancusi. So it's just similar elements stacked on top of each other. And this is sort of a work that had a lot of artists find quite inspiring. This sort of connection between the sky and the earth and the balancing within is something we as humans wandering the surface of the earth are very experienced in. And I think Constantin Brancusi was interested in this sort of constant balancing of us and objects he was dealing with in his practice. This is a Japanese artist, Isamu Noguchi. This is a photograph I have taken myself. This is in the Noguchi Museum in New York, so you should definitely go there if you have a chance. So this is a sort of a similar piece to Constantin Brancusi, but it's what I like about it, when you look at the edge is sort of wandering. It's kind of try to find like a sort of like a piece of grass. It's kind of conquering into the sky. A beautiful piece. Basically just two types of stones stacked on top of each other. Famously, Alberto Giacometti has dealt with the same subject, the standing, the walking, the being cemented on the ground, having this weight on the feet. So very often his figures are tiny, but the plinths are big. It's how we are sort of connected with the earth. So this is something Giacometti greatly explored and obviously produced fantastic sculpture with it. And then also the upright is also very often followed by falling. Henry Moore did a lot of these sort of reclining figures. The relaxing but also falling part is part of making sculpture. So the balance and imbalance, Henry Moore. Obviously, this is a reclining figure by Henry Moore. But we have this, you don't have to look and go far in order to explore this. This is a Taiwanese artist, Yu Ming. You probably know him better from this figure, which is, I think, in Central Plaza, Central Square. There are various, you see his work quite prominently displayed in Hong Kong. I really love his Tai Chi figures. I think they're brilliant. They're all based on very simple, he started to make these works in wood, where he just kind of chopped out these figures really rough, just with a chainsaw, roughed them out. And yeah, also something I do with my students. When we carve stone, we have chainsaws where we sort of cut wood initially and then learn how to carve. But Yu Ming, have a look. Next time you see a Yu Ming sculpture, just go up closer and just kind of walk around it and see how they sort of work. They look sort of very rough, but they have something really quite magical. I really, they're sort of like, they're very much fit into the Hong Kong landscape. And I just need to kind of keep a quick look at the time. I think we're moving towards the end. Just I want to finish with briefly showing some of my work, because as a teacher, I'm informed through my own practice. I've been a practicing artist for, for a long time before I came to AVA, and I still continue to produce work, obviously. So my practice is an ongoing concern. How I sort of dealt with balancing and non-balancing and falling. This is a work in a collection in Portugal. It's called Crashed Semi, or Crashed Semi-Detached House. It's carved in marble. It's in their collection. This is a work in Northern England where I sort of made this sort of column that sort of gradually disintegrates and falls. But also the sort of more sort of harmonious aspects is something I sort of kind of looked at from a very early age. This is the work actually I did as a student, the Mirror House on Tyree. So, and I want to leave it there. If you become students, just be ambitious and try to enjoy it, because if you come to AVA is a great place to study, and it's a big playground. All you need is to bring the sort of right energy and enthusiasm, and you will find plenty of opportunities to kind of do things with us. So I want to leave it there and pass this on to Suki.
Thank you, Ekkehard. So any of you, if you have any question for Ekkehard, then you can feel free to make use of our chat box to, you can type your questions, or maybe you can raise your hand and we will allow you to, you can talk directly to Ekkehard for any questions you have.
So if you have any questions, I really encourage you to ask me now, because we are all here, you're in the comfort of your home. So if you have anything that you're curious about, just ask me now. It's the quickest way.
Well, actually, I personally have a question. So if I really want to study visual arts in the university, so is it necessary for me to have any prior background about visual arts, or do I need to have maybe have a very beautiful portfolio with a lot of work have done before?
Well, we go through a two-stage process application. Potential students need to submit a portfolio of works, which is graded by two academics, and then this is moved on to so this is the first filtering process where we look at the portfolio, and then obviously we have to sort of weed out things that are obviously not good, or we think there's really nothing we can sort of work with. But then we have a two-tier interview process. So students are coming. At the moment we do it via Zoom. We interview students. They are given a task in advance where they actually have to sort of explore certain aspects. We interview them, and then we can sort of figure out whether this candidate is used, fits within our program, but also the potential students can sort of see whether this is for them. It goes both ways. Students need to make the right and an informed decision about where to study and whether what they want sort of fits in with what we offer. So it goes both ways, yeah. But as for beautiful portfolio, I'm less interested in beautiful portfolios. I'm more interested in interesting portfolios. Sometimes it's not the beautiful drawings that sort of catch our eye, but it's something that where you really see this student is thinking about what he does and what he explores, rather than just fulfilling a task given by a secondary school teacher. So that's I think, for me, the most important thing, that students produce work on their own merit outside class. Yeah, of course, they have assignments through class, but very often they are then generic and repetitive. And when you look at portfolios, you can sometimes see, oh yeah, they went to this class because they looked at the same artist, so on and so forth. And sometimes it's more interesting to sort of see, I remember I had an interview with a student who portfolio was okay, but then we discovered, I sort of figured it out, he has a really interesting Instagram feed, you know, where he makes daily drawings. And I said, oh, just, you know, he was sort of saying it more like in a side note. I said, so what is that Instagram thing? So I typed it in, it gave me the address, and this was really interesting. So yeah, of course we admitted it him, you know. Sometimes students they think they have to do it in a certain way. It's not true, you know. Do something that is genuine, and that genuinely comes from a real interest, because this is something we need to work with, you know. We can work with, because we need that sort of energy, and we can nurture that energy into the right channel. Yeah.
I think
there is
a question.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second. I think we have a question from Dahlia. Dahlia, do you have a question? I saw you raise your hand before, but right now you. Okay, just a second.
You probably have to unmute your audio.
Yeah. Dahlia, can you unmute yourself? Dahlia?
Well, she's not forthcoming.
I'm Dahlia.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, fire ahead. Hi. What is the question? I think your line is very, very slow.
May I apply the university score transcript for application?
Sorry, Dahlia, can you repeat your question again? Maybe the signal is not that good.
May I transfer my university score transcript for application?
I don't really know what you mean by that.
Do you mean that you want to like transfer from a university to our university?
Not transferring. But after my bachelor's degree graduation on 2023, I would like to continue my further studies at HKBU.
So where are you studying right now?
Binus University in Indonesia.
Oh, you're in Indonesia. You know, then I would recommend you perhaps enroll in the master's program. You know, we have a master's program at AVA as well, which is a 2-year program. And so with your BA in Indonesia and with an arts background, you know, you should just kind of enroll on a master's program with us.
Oh.
Yeah. So I would strongly, if you already have a BA, there's no point in doing another BA. You just go straight into a master's program with us.
So if you're interested to know more about our master program, maybe later on our colleagues can send you the link about the master program that we are offering at Hong Kong Baptist University. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But my interest is in animation.
In animation. Yeah, animation.
Yes.
We have a number of digital professors who work in digital arts, animation, graphic design, computer design, computer animation design. We have, I think, 4 or 5 positions who work in this field. So yes, that we are well covered for that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, if we don't have any more questions right now, maybe we can leave it first, and we have the next Q&A sections after we talk about the admission to Hong Kong Baptist University. So if you really have other questions, you can make use of the chat box to type the questions. And in the next Q&A section, we will continue to answer your questions. Shall we start my part about admission to Hong Kong Baptist University?
Suki, I will then leave this meeting because I need to go back to my students. Well, thank you for being with us, everybody. I hope it was informative. One thing I should not forget to mention is, for those who are in Hong Kong, we have a physical graduation show. So we have an exhibition at Kai Tak campus opening on Friday, 24th of July. So Friday, 24th of July will be the opening at the Kai Tak campus. If you are interested in our programs, I think this is the date you should put into your calendar, because it's basically a one-stop shop. You can come look at the work, so you get an impression, what the campus is like. Well, that part of the campus, we have two campuses, but the Fine Art campus and the galleries and so on. But you will see students work, so that will give you an idea what sort of programs we have on offer, and so it will be the perfect place to get the perfect overview. So thank you for listening to me, and I leave you in the safe hands of Suki. Bye-bye.
So much.
Thanks.
So right now I will share my screen first. So I guess everybody can see my screen right now, right? So if you still have any other questions, you can still make use of the chat box to continue keying in your questions. But right now we'll have a very brief information sections about admission to Hong Kong Baptist University, particularly for the international applicants. So before talking about Hong Kong Baptist University, I actually want to tell you a little bit more about Hong Kong first. I believe everybody knows that Hong Kong is a city of opportunities. So we have long been a competitive economy, and it's one of the most important financial centers in the whole world. So Hong Kong is not only the home to the regional headquarters of many multinational corporates, but also it is the gateway to China. So, and when you come to Hong Kong, actually language will not be a big problem to you, because in Hong Kong, both English and also Chinese is our official language. We have a statistics that actually over 90% of people under 30 in Hong Kong, they can speak in English, they can speak in Chinese, including Cantonese and also Mandarin. In Hong Kong, I would say quality education is almost guaranteed. Actually, we are consistently being ranked as one of the best student cities in the QS ranking. And what is more important to the international student is that actually after you finish your tertiary education in Hong Kong, you are allowed to stay for another 12 months in order to find a job. So if you can secure a job within a 12 months, then you can extend your stay here in order to stay and live in Hong Kong for a longer period of time. So after talking about all these, which is very trivial description about Hong Kong, actually I also want to share with you, Hong Kong is not only a city for opportunity, but also a city for quality living. Here you can see in the picture, when we talk about Hong Kong, usually you think about those high-rise buildings, right? But I think this picture actually describes Hong Kong in a better way, at least for me. I think Hong Kong is just like this picture. It's a combination of metropolitan as well as nature. I'm a local in Hong Kong, so I think Hong Kong actually has a very beautiful landscape. It's not just an urban jungle. Actually, I can tell you that over 60% of the land in Hong Kong are in fact green area, which is very surprising to many foreigners. So no matter where you are in Hong Kong, within 30 minutes of transportation, you can definitely either go on a beach or maybe go into a mountain. I would say in Hong Kong, there are also a lot of outlying islands as well. And there is even a UNESCO geopark in Hong Kong. So being a Chinese city right now, and also in the past, we were a colony of UK's. So we actually have a very diversified culture in Hong Kong in terms of maybe the architecture, the festival, the customs, or the lifestyle. And I must also mention the diversified food culture here in Hong Kong, making Hong Kong a food paradise. Not only from the street food, but also the Michelin-style restaurants. So being a metropolitan city, we also have a very efficient and reliable transportation system. So no matter where you are in Hong Kong, actually you can, within 1 hour or two, you can definitely travel to any part of Hong Kong. So being a local Hong Konger, I would say I really enjoy the life living in this city. So this is a very short introduction about Hong Kong, and I would like to move on to talk about Hong Kong Baptist University, which is actually in this circle area in this picture. This is Hong Kong Baptist University. So Hong Kong Baptist University, we call it HKBU. It was founded in 1956. And as you can see in the previous picture, it is actually located in the city center. English is our major medium of instructions in Hong Kong Baptist University. We have a very good student-faculty ratio of 15:1, which offer our students more chance to talk to the professor or to allow a more personalized learning experience. And also, we are a liberal arts university, delivering academic excellence, innovation, and also social progress. So actually the power of being a liberal arts university is that our students are not required to sacrifice their interests to study something that are so-called more useful. In fact, HKBU is committed not only to the academic excellence in teaching or in research, but also we focus on the whole person development of our students. We train our students how to think about a problem, how to understand a world from different perspectives. And we also dedicate to nurture our students to become more creative, more innovative, more global, and also more caring. HKBU values creativity of the new generation. We encourage our students to be bold in delivering diversified talents. In fact, HKBU is the only university in Hong Kong that is actively participating in the creative domains of visual arts, music, film and screen industry, and also creative writing, literary study, as well as translation theory and practice. What is more is that we have also over 15 interest clubs in the aspects which is other than students studying discipline area. All these help them to enrich their social experience and also their campus experience. So when coming to innovative, actually I would say the idea of innovation of our HKBU students is actually in their gene, I would say. In the lower picture of this, you see in the lower picture, there is a student and he's called Ming. And actually he did his overseas internship in Beijing. At that time, he was invited by a local friend to taste a very authentic dinner at home. And this experience actually inspired him to do a startup business. When he came back to Hong Kong, he joined an entrepreneurship program, and he started to think about doing a startup business to connect the tourists and also some local that can host a homemade dinner for the tourists. Excuse me. So through the program, actually Meng met his mentor, which is the guy you can see in this picture. He's actually Dr. Cheng, the head of our economic department. So the mentor helps Meng and also his team from not only analyzing the cost or the constraint of his product, but he also helped Meng to identify the potential crowdfunding events. In fact, Meng's team eventually wins the Google Empowering Youth Entrepreneurship Program among 250 teams of international competitors. So I'll say being global is actually an international trend right now. HKBU also strives to create a very global campus to students. We are collaborating with over 400 overseas partners from more than 40 destinations. Actually, we send students abroad to widen their global experience and also their exposures. Not only to go to the exchange program, we also offer overseas internship program and also some overseas service learning program as well. Also, some outstanding students will also have the chance to attend some international conferences, competitions, or maybe they can even step onto the world stage. As you can see in the lower picture here, actually it is about an exhibition in Germany with the works that made by our students of the Academy of Visual Arts. Actually, many of our professors, like Ekkehard, they are the active professionals in the field, so they will help our students to connect them to the world. Our university also emphasizes a lot in teaching students to care about the society. We actually launched a project called Truth Road in 2018. It highlights how HKBU incorporated service learning in our formal curriculum. For example, we have a course that is called Global Marketing. So students, they are asked to help a social enterprise, a real social enterprise in Hong Kong, to customize a product which can preserve Hong Kong's cultural heritage. So eventually they make a keychain that can demonstrate the craftsmanship of old Hong Kong. They design it and then produce it and then sell it to the foreigners. So through these marketing events, actually the students not only learn those marketing strategies, but they also being involved in promoting the social cohesion in Hong Kong. This is how the student, they can try to give back to the community and at the same time when they are studying and learning in the program. Actually, HKBU nurtured each of our students to become a very unique individual. Equipped with different skills or learning experience, our unique graduates make a very different achievement in diversified career prospects. So you can see here we have entrepreneur, we have scientist, curator, we have director, or even polar expedition expert, and there are definitely more. These actually cohere with the diversified undergraduate programs that we offer via our 7 faculty. We have our Faculty of Arts, which offer programs in arts, music, and also creative writing, etc. And we also have our School of Business, which is being one of the top 1% business school around the world. And also it is the only triple accredited business school in Hong Kong. We also have the School of Chinese Medicine, being the unique provider for the pharmacy in Chinese medicine. And we also have a School of Communication, which offers programs in film, in screen industry, journalism, public relations, and advertising, etc. We also have the Faculty of Science, having the first program in the bioresources and agriculture science in Hong Kong. We also have the Faculty of Social Science, offering programs in Global and China Studies, European Studies, and also a very special program called Physical Education and Recreation Management. And last but not least, we have the Academy of Visual Arts, where Ekkehard has just mentioned, being one of the first practical-based arts and design academy in Hong Kong. So if you are interested in pursuing study in HKBU, please pay attention to our application timeline. We have 3 rounds of application. The early round will be from September to November, and the main round from December to January, and also the extended round from January to May. So because of the COVID-19 situation this year, we have actually extended our deadline this year to the 10th of July. which means that if you want to study in the September of this year, you can still apply to our program, and the deadline is extended to the 10th of July. So if you're interested, please go to our website, admissions.hkbu.edu.hk to submit your application. At most, you can complete your application with 2 program choices. So here, I also want to share with you some information about the fees and expenses needed for international students to study in HKBU. Our tuition fee costs about $18,000 per year, which is significantly more affordable than those in US, in UK, or in Australia. So together with the whole residential fee and the budget for your personal expenses, the cost for 1 year of study will be around $25,000 in total. Actually, for international students, if you want to earn some money on campus, you are also allowed to work on campus for up to 20 hours per week. We also offer some admission scholarships for international students. We have the University Admission Scholarship, and also the Hong Kong government also offer a Belt and Road Scholarship for some students. So if you want to know more about the scholarships we have, you can access to the link here, or you can go through the QR code here. So finally, last but not least, we have our contact information here. If you have any questions about admissions to HKBU, please feel free to reach us by any of the means here. You can call us, send us email, or go to our website to find out more information. We also have our Instagram and Facebook information here. But definitely, if you have already got a question right now, you can let me know. So I just want to see, let me see whether you have any questions for me right now. Any of you have a question? So if you have any question, you can actually raise your hand here. For the student who raise your hand, you can actually unmute yourself and then you can talk to me directly for your question. Let me see. Okay, I think I received a question in the chat box from Dahlia about what is the portfolio requirement for animation major. I think it depends on which program you're specifically talking about, because as mentioned earlier, probably you are more interested about our master program. So if you're interested about a master program, depends on the department that you're applying to. They will ask you to submit the portfolio in the application. Well, I mean, after the application, actually we will invite students to either attend interview or maybe submit some portfolio. But usually after you go for the information, we will send you email with the instructions. So after you receive the instructions from email, they will tell you how you can submit your portfolio, either maybe submit it online or using a Google Drive, etc. So based on which departments you are applying for and which program you're applying for, they may have different portfolio requirements. So I'm sorry that at this moment I cannot like give you a very specific answer. But as mentioned earlier, we will ask our colleague to send you an email about the master program that are available in HKBU. So probably you can contact the department that you are very interested in to ask for more details about the portfolio requirement you want to know. Okay, we have a question asking when can students submit their portfolio in the extended round, which is actually similar to what I've mentioned. After you submit the application, actually we will contact you directly by email. We'll give you the instructions, maybe asking you to attend interview or audition or submit extra document. So those extra documents could be your portfolio as well. We'll give the details about how you can submit your portfolio. It could be any kind of portfolio. Like I could just mention, some students, maybe their portfolio could be their Instagram as well. So we will give you the instructions how you can tell us more about your background or your portfolio in the email. So probably if you submit an application to us, after your submission, you have to wait for our further email. We'll contact you directly to provide you more instructions. But if you do not hear from us, so feel free to just send us an email to arkdirect@hkbu.edu.hk as I'll show in the screen again later so that you can capture the email address and you can send us an email if you have any questions as well. Okay, I think students ask the questions about the residential hall fee and whether a student can choose the residential hall. Actually, we have quite a few residential hall on campus. I will show my screen again about the information about the course. So as you can see here, we actually have the residential fee here. It costs about US dollar like 5,000 something. So a total you will need to pay for around 25,000 US dollar per year, which cover your tuition and also the hall fee and also your personal expenses. Okay, any more questions? If you have any more questions, so you have to grab a chance to ask your question here. If not, I want to tell you again our email address. So if you have any other questions, you can contact us via our email, ardirect@hkbu.edu.hk. So you can send us an email for whatever questions you have. And thank you so much for attending the webinar today, and thank you so much for staying with me. And hope you have a good week ahead. Thank you. Goodbye.